in the Gaza Strip. Just in the past 3 days, they have now embarked on, you know, surface aerial artillery and direct combatants. So what do? Their soldiers are now entering. And what do? They go to hospitals and schools, directly shoot professionals, shoot children. Little children are dying. Total impunity within the global stage. Now, let me tell you this. It's a very critical matter, and I want to probably conclude on that note. In fact, I will. The International Criminal Court is seated there, right? When you talk, they tell you they are not unfairly targeting Africa, except that they operate in a system where they must be referral. A case must be referred to the office of the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. Then that triggers or instigates a course of action for them to be able to go on with proceedings. That is not true. Are you aware that has been a lie all this while? The ICC have got what it takes to deal with international impunity, even when a nation at the Security Council, a veto power decides to veto against it. In fact, you may want to look at the provisions of Article 15 of the Rome Statute. Article 15 of the Rome Statute establishes a principle, mutuo proprietary. It actually empowers the office of the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court to directly invoke inquisitorial powers and to prosecute nations that, in the opinion of the court, have undermined the standards, the normative standards of international human rights, without necessarily waiting for a referral from the UN Security Council. Why can't the ICC and the Office of the Prosecutor extend the principles of mutuo proprietary on Israel? Meanwhile, if we go into the historical antecedents, we have reason to believe that the Palestinians who are attacked and molested and killed are more Jewish than these Israelis some of us are seeing. Please. So if there is any problem in the world today, that problem is the UN followed by the United States. They are the ones disturbing the international stage. And we should be very frank with them and begin to also give them sanctions softly. Must the US always sanction people who commit lesser offenses than they do? What kind of hypocrisy is this? There's no way we can have a global hegemon. Are you getting it? So let the US spare the rest of the world. We need some level of stability. They cannot continue to benefit on the chaotic environment they keep creating. So Sudan will never be peaceful. The Middle East will never be peaceful. The Sahel will never be peaceful. Owing to what? Owing to US foreign policy in these areas. In fact, the only place with the strength to deal with the US and other external forces is Africa. But unfortunately, because of the kind of uniform our leaders are quick to wear when they assume power, I'm sorry to say we will not be able to do much about it. And it renders the definition of democracy useless in our context. And I think that it is better we reconsider something better than democracy. And to do that, maximum pressure is required from the masses. Maximum pressure is required from the masses. And I am advocating that the Ghanaian youth, the Ghanaian people, we use all means legitimate and constructive, but without compromising the harshness and seriousness and the fire that we require to press down good governance. We don't have a home. Africa is no longer a home, owing to the kind of political leadership we have. And that is what translates into what? Our resource governance. And so we are witnessing the things we are witnessing. I'll reserve the rest of my comments, and then we will deal with the organized labor.
All right. Thank you very much, Elvis Bota. Dr. Ramsey.
Yes. Good morning to you, and good morning to my fellow panelists, and good morning to the good people of Ghana. Yes, the Sudanese issue is yet again another sad story hitting we Africans. I mean, I quite remember when Sudan was split into two, the North and the South. And that was as a result of the agenda of the West, namely the US, to try and suck out the oil resources of the Sudanese people. They have been able to succeed. People that were there to support Sudan, like leaders like Muammar al-Gaddafi, have all been shot down. Right? That today, Libya has now turned into a gateway for, I would say, ammunition smugglers into Africa. Bless, as it stands now, and you just reiterated earlier on, the crisis that is faced in Sudan is something that we as a continent would have to rally around them and see how best we can help them mitigate this and other issues that we face. The African Union has failed to live up to its expectation, and it's been caught up in this mess, right? My brother mentioned the UN. As for the UN, we know that the UN was not created for Africans, even though we are members of the UN. That is why a continent with a population of 1.2 billion people doesn't have a permanent seat at the UN Security Council to date. And we are calling on African leaders to push an agenda and ensure that going forward, the UN has Africa has its proper representation at the UN, that we deserve a permanent seat at the UN Security Council. Bless, the healthcare crisis in Sudan is blighting the population. As it stands now, with the recorded cases of over 100,000 cholera outbreaks, different outbreaks in Sudan, right? The crisis in Sudan is greater than even that of Gaza, right? That of DRC, that of Central African Republic, and that of Ukraine combined. Because we're talking about a conflict that has displaced 10 million people. We're talking about a conflict that has displaced further 2.4 million people out of Sudan, right? And we're talking about a conflict that has inflicted pain to women and children, that today, right, a lot of children in their millions are malnourished. And so we need to do something about it. And Egypt, UAE, US, the UK, and other interest groups should put their interests aside, for God's sake. What does it profit a man when he gains the whole world and loses his soul? Right? We are human beings, for God's sake. Right? And of course, they cannot push our agenda. And this is as a result of the failures of our African leaders. The failures of the leadership in Sudan to make sure that they come together and push a collective agenda that would alleviate the people out of suffering. Right? Omar al-Bashir was touted as an evil leader. But today, the current state of Sudan, right, is worse off as compared to the days of Omar al-Bashir. Right? And so if they can also try and bring the parties of the SAF and then the RSF and Bashir together and see how best they can find amicable solutions, I think that Sudan would rise again. And of course, the African Union should also do something about it, right? We tend to always depend on the UN, the WHO for funds for African problems. Where are our own solutions? We don't have solutions to our problems, right? And that's, as my brother rightly said, that Africa today might seem to be ours, but in reality, we do not control Africa. And he stated the theory of the paradox of plenty, right? That we are a rich continent, but we are a continent to the most poorest people in the world. So, bless. I would not say much. My brother has said it all. We hope that the AU and then the UN and other interest groups would push a collective agenda to mitigate the crisis in Sudan and other regions in Africa, so that Africans can enjoy definitely the God-given natural resources that we have, so for optimum development.
Thank you, Doc. Hamza.
Yes, sir. Yes. Good morning, of course, to our cherished guests and my colleague panelists in the studio. See, I think that my brothers here have done an excellent job in terms of trying to more or less break down the issues for all of us to follow and understand. But you see, like Doc indicated, sometimes to understand some of these challenges, one needs to go back to history to appreciate the sectional interest that characterized, first of all, the creation of such international organizations and the role of such organizations in modern day history. And you see, bless, in as much as we all can sit around this table and express our reservations or sympathies towards the good people of Sudan, it should not be lost on any one of us that the major cause of what is happening in Sudan has very little to do with our superpowers, but to a very large extent, majority or a bigger share of the blame must be placed on Africans and our leadership, like Doc indicated. You see, if you look at the nature of international relations, and most importantly, our political engagements with other sovereign states, you would come to realize that whichever way you look at it, it is about interest. So at the level of international affairs, every state is engaged in pursuing its interests. And if you break it down from the state level to regional levels, every regional bloc must have a sectional interest that it pursues. And so to understand what is happening in Sudan, the questions we should be asking is, what is the interest of Sudan in all of this? And secondly, what is the interest of Africa as a regional bloc? And what have we done in the past either to forestall such occurrences or more or less to resolve them if they emerge, before we go and place that at the doorstep of our Western superpowers? I have always said, I think that this is basic knowledge for most African leaders, that even the historical nature or the historical formation of the United Nations can be traced to the United States' power as a superpower. It is therefore not coincidental that most of the discussions that eventually birthed the United Nations, in fact, took place in the United States of America, Washington precisely. And again, the whole idea of the United Nations was a policy direction of the United States government, which was headed by Franklin D. Roosevelt. And those of you who question the competence and intellectual abilities of disabled persons, indeed, Franklin was disabled. And throughout the war, he was seated in his wheelchair and led America beautifully throughout the Second World War. Indeed, he's one of the few to have gone past the 8-year tenure, and even in his second term, elections were postponed largely because of the Second World War. That tells you the kind of confidence the American people had in him. And it was his idea that in order to forestall future occurrences of wars of that nature, there was a need for the Committee of Nations to come out with a national or international body that would seek to regulate security and economic issues as far as the global sphere was concerned. So this was not an idea mooted by any African leader or any other Western superpower, but that of the United States of America. But some way, somehow, they managed to get people to buy into it. And that is also the source of the power the so-called P5 have today. And if you engage them too, they'll also be blunt and inform you that indeed, when it comes to the exercise of that veto power, the United States of America still holds sway. Because the whole gamut of the United Nations is simply a manifestation or reflection of the policy direction of the United States of America. And so, to understand why UN is ineffective, one simply needs to go back into that history. That is the reason why if the United States of America is in Iraq, the UN becomes clearly ineffective. That is why if it is in Afghanistan, the UN becomes ineffective. And same way, when it comes to the Sudan bloc, you cannot make references to what is happening in the Sudan bloc without references to the U.S. policy interests as far as that sector is concerned. So yes, but then again, I already indicated that you do not need to blame them wholly, especially when we also have what it takes as African people to meet those demands or to face squarely the policy directions of the United States, if indeed we are committed and we are able to build a united front. Unfortunately, that seems not to be the case in Africa. We have become agents of destruction to the superpowers. And so do not be surprised that even if African Union decides to act together, the United States of America, through its economic support, as far as the African continent is concerned, can sit back and pull strings to make it difficult for other countries to come on board. And so at the end of the day, we are unable to present a united front to even help our own people. What is happening in Sudan does not, in the normal sense, it shouldn't have been calling for the intervention of the United Nations. We have regional blocs that should be able to handle it. So what is African Union doing? That it now has to take the United Nations to intervene. And anywhere you see the United Nations intervening, that is the United States of America intervening. And it basically has to do with their interests. Now, you would be shocked to hear the amount of money that U.S. Congress will release under the guise of farming. Because you see, the resources that the U.S. government needs to take out of their country must be justified. And so, issues like farming will provide an appealing incentive to the good people of America to be willing to part with so much in terms of resources outside the United States of America. But the interesting thing is that when these monies are released or are approved by Congress under the guise of farming, the questions we should be asking, those questions should be whether indeed such releases are actually spent on the cause of farming. Definitely not. These are resources that are used once again to finance rebel groups and factional interests, not just within Sudan, but the African continent as a whole. It is therefore not surprising that, though in Africa we do not manufacture guns and heavy artillery, but most of these engagements, we have access to them. Where do we get them from? Where do we get them from?
Oh, I've asked this question 1,000 times on this panel. I'm yet to get it.
Mostly through Libya.
Yes.
Through the black market.
It's through the black market. But you see,
Gaddafi was the one holding the fort.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So that is why I'm saying that the problem, you see, when you listen to the United Nations, it's part of their policy direction. They must throw something at you to get your support. So one day you wake up and you tune your radio, or you tune into a radio TV station, and the United Nations is telling you that, look, we have to get into Sudan. There are issues of famine. Then we all go on board to support them.
Those I was talking about, they just seductively,
and they get you on board. But the bigger picture is always missing. And that is the reason why, as Africans, we must begin to take charge of our own destiny. Let it be the African Union telling us this. But rest assured, maybe after today's program, if you go to the African Union website, you would see them copy word for word what the UN has just released in relation to farming and put it on their website.
The AU is the most useless regional entity.
But even the AU headquarters was led by who?
China.
So their annual budgets. They prepare annual budgets and just submit it to this. Sometimes you find the EU financing the budget fully.
Yes.
So you see, these are the issues. So even African Union will see this as a cash cow. So do not be surprised.
Oh, yes.
Within the coming days, they will begin setting up committees around the so-called famine revelation that has been made by the United Nations, not based on their own research as African Union. So at the end of the day, the African perspective would be lost in the discourse. And immediately you lose that African perspective, resolving the conflict becomes nearly impossible. Because to understand, to be able to resolve the crisis, one must understand the origin. And to understand the origin, you must have that African lens and perspective. Unfortunately, in the discourse, that would be missing. Because our leaders are clearly inept, in some cases, unforgivably incompetent, and in some cases, driven by greed. So they do not do anything progressive in terms of our effort to understand our own challenges and provide African solutions to them. The challenge, therefore, now falls on us, especially those of us who are young and gunning to be elected into leadership positions. And when I make references to leadership positions, I'm not just talking about political positions. It starts even from the four walls of our universities. Those who are gunning to be elected as SRC presidents, those who are gunning to be elected as departmental heads, presidents, Psychology Students Association, Political Science Students Association, those who are gunning to be elected as NUCS presidents, local and national NUCS presidents, the conscientization must start from that level. We must begin to find ways of building a new identity for Africa. No, I take that back. We must begin to go back to history to actually understand the African identity. We don't need a construction of a new identity for Africa. And if we go back to understand that African identity and transition into national leadership roles and still maintain that identity, I'm pretty much convinced that we would be able to inject that level of change that we desire. But if at that level we open ourselves up to corruption, petty partisanship that has so far been inimical to the progress of the African continent, then we would only be engaged in repeating the cycle. But that must change. If the likes of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and Julius Nyerere, right?
Yeah.
And Nelson Mandela were to accept the status quo, I am not sure that we would have had independent African states today. They did their bit, and they are no more. Our leaders after them have so far failed to live up to expectation. The question, therefore, we should be asking as leaders of today and potential leaders tomorrow is that whether we would be taking the example of the likes of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and Julius Nyerere, Nelson Mandela, or we would be taking the example of the likes of Akufo-Addo, of the likes of, what's the name of the president of Paul Biya, of the likes of Alassane Ouattara, name them. These are the questions we must ask ourselves. But for me, I know that the only way out is to go back and reflect the ideals of the likes of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. We must reflect them in our everyday life and decide to take a new course for the sake of our countries. Like he indicated, Doc is an intellectual, and I respect intellectuals wherever I engage them. And of course, my colleague Osu. You see, if you look at what is happening today, it is not simply because we are bereft of ideas. It is simply because we have opened ourselves up to be corrupted by the current political regime, either in Ghana, in Nigeria, or whatsoever. Today, if you see young people gunning for leadership positions in most parts of Africa, the motivation is not about national development. The motivation largely is to benefit financially. We all cannot pretend.
Oh, the younger one, we are more corrupt.
We are more, and that is even worrying, bless. That is worrying. You see, for those of some of us as young, my first motivation to get engaged in politics came in my primary school. The beauty when the national anthem was played those days, and I saw even my uncles and my grandfathers on bicycles going to the farm, would often stop. to give that kind of dignity and respect to the national anthem. That was when I started asking questions. As a young guy in St. Paul's Primary, Gumbeni, a deprived community then, and still deprived though. You understand? So I started asking questions. And that's when I began learning about the likes of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and the likes of Jerry Rawlings. That sense of nationalism. And I began to appreciate the enormous responsibility of leadership. But today, our younger generation, majority of those who are in politics today first start up as, what do they call them? Sakawa boys, right? Those who are engaged in internet fraud. They have access to little money. You wake up the next day, they are gunning for leadership positions in political parties. And we ignorantly also queue to vote for them. And they become either constituency, regional, or national executives. Their number one motivation is money. Today, we see people abandon sensitive professions to move into politics. Young people, either from academia, name it, what's the name? Nursing, the nursing fraternity, teaching, moving into politics. And I have always said, and people think that it is an arena that should be taken lightly, and so anybody can just wake up on a daily basis and decide to be a politician. I have always said that, you see, the kind of skill you need to be a nurse or a doctor, that you have to go through 4 years of training to acquire. Don't think that the field of politics is one without regulation. So even if you want to be a politician, for goodness sake, no one says you shouldn't be. A nurse can be a politician, a doctor can be a politician, but at least before jumping into the fray of politics, give yourself that duty of learning about politics and policy and knowing the do's and don'ts. Maybe in the process of trying to appreciate policy and politics, whatever selfish interest you had that was driving you to assume political role, you would get to appreciate that, look, these challenges facing our country is much more bigger than my selfish interest of wanting to make it in politics. And in the process, you would be carefully aligned to pursue the national interest. But today, that seems not to be the preoccupation. We all wake up on daily basis, and because people have so much resources because of their proximity to political power, we feel that it is enough justification for us to also jump into politics. What is happening in Sudan could happen in Ghana. What is happening in Sudan could happen in Nigeria. It could happen in Benin, any part of Africa. But the question we should be asking ourselves is that as we scramble to play roles in political parties, what kind of legacy do we want to leave for generations yet unborn? So that we will not be reminded, they will not remember us in the same light that we would remember the likes of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. So the future of this continent rests squarely on the shoulders of the youth. They must make a commitment today. If you are a teacher wanting to do politics, if you are a nurse wanting to do politics, if you are a carpenter wanting to do politics, I beg you in the name of all that is good, that the first point to start is to begin to understand what it means to be a leader, what it means to do politics, what the interests of the people are, what the objectives of your community people are, and ask yourself those straight questions, whether you can, if given the opportunity, respond to those challenges. Because to hold the trust of the people is no mean responsibility, and some of us take it for granted. So yes, we can decide to blame the Western world as much as we want, my brother bless, but the onus rests on us to change the course of history. I always like listening to my brother, Dr. Elvis Bota, largely because of the intellectual perspectives he provides to issues of international relations, and most importantly, politics in particular. But even he has suddenly started running away from politics. And look at the irony. Before he attained that level of academic excellence, he was an active politician. Now, having gone through the books, he's become a bit laid back.
I've been refined, don't worry.
And now politics doesn't appear. The petty partisanship is no more appealing to him. It is all about policy and what is good for the interests of the country. That is what I'm talking about.
Right.
And that is the example we must follow as young people.
Right. Thank you very much, Hamza Suhini. I'm receiving messages because of our viewers are telling me they are watching us from Tamale. Pan African Television actually will be in Tamale this weekend. I think they've set or so. By tomorrow, they are actually going to Tamale North specifically. So, we are going to be there. And so yeah, but let's move away from conversations in relation to Sudan and come back to Ghana. There's a big issue, a very interesting one for that matter. I think it was 2 days ago that the Ghana Medical Association made it clear that they weren't going to partake in the nationwide strike by organized labor. People read meanings into it and even looked at the press statement that was released and realized that it was the president who actually signed that press release. But if you look at past press releases, the president signs, the general secretary signs, and so people were saying that it was a unilateral decision that was taken. But let's also look at some of the issues that have arisen, particularly in relation to the decision to entirely not embark on the industrial action. I've actually seen the justification for it, and the justification are that the government has already taken steps. The government has already taken steps to address the issue, and so they are no longer, going to strike. But people are, of course, not happy about it. And Hamza, I'm starting this conversation with you. What is the general feeling about organized labor's decision to not strike again? And their justification is that steps are being taken. I don't know if you're aware. I think about 3 days ago, the Daily Graphic reported that the LI that made it possible for people to go into our forest reserves or into our forest and then to go and mine, as soon as Parliament reconvenes, they are going to repeal that. Also, the president has asked soldiers to be deployed into our forest and onto our water bodies to check galamsey. And so, yes, the president is taking new steps to address the issue, and so they are no longer striking. What are your thoughts?
Before I jump into, permit me to use this platform to say good morning to my uncle. I'm told he's monitoring right now. Someone who took over responsibility in raising us, myself, my senior brother, and other younger brothers after the unfortunate demise of my old man. One of the people who paid his dues, I must say, to the Republic of this country, to the Republic of Ghana, especially in the agricultural front. But unfortunately, like many others in his stead, sometimes in retirement, the state has always not been kind to his likes. I'm talking here about Alhaji Ibrahim. He's been a pillar in our life, and he continues to be so. He's not been well for some time now, so may God grant him good health to continue to do what he's doing for the family and for all of us. We appreciate him a lot.
Right. Let me go for a short break. I'll be back shortly.
Okay.
I want to address an issue. I'll be back shortly.
Bama and Yama would a good trouble so the name we are. Miniama 1212 and see me try to escape to me bottom. And it's a medicine will be as how much you could be a musame. I don't want to tomami.com and also need a free classified website that will be a person with Tobia, say a car, TV, fridge, fan, computer, assassin and person with Toma, tomami.com. It wouldn't win in one country. May any dynamics with the out and run the for mobile phone now. We log in www.tomami.com. Tomami.com. Now we take a picture of item now person will turn. Now we do price. A show. Who do you that's it? With the minimum tomami.com. Tomami.com. A free classified website that we do a person will turn here. We need the two of it. A show. No be able to. A classic.
Stay refreshed with Malt. Prepare for hydration.
The law is pertinent to every aspect of our lives, and so lawyers must not be the backup plan for the rainy day only.
Nothing received from a client should be put in a lawyer's personal account until such time that the money has actually been earned.
It is very dangerous to perpetuate the theory that it is narcotics that leads to crime increase.
The relevance of the law cuts across our business, social, and family transactions. Doubt this?
You can't borrow from somebody who's your client. That would lead to a conflict situation. And that's something that as a lawyer you must jealously guard when you are representing a client.
You have to register your Mohammedan marriage within 7 days?
Within a week of the celebration of the marriage.
So if you don't register it, it's not a valid marriage. Journey with our Law Express panel every week as we confirm the place of the law in our everyday transactions.
Under etiquette rules, a lawyer can terminate for non-payment of fees. So basically, if you don't pay your fees, a lawyer has a right to terminate your engagement.
Get straight into that conversation about organized labor's decision to rescind or to not embark on that industrial action. And then before that, before we went on break, Hamza was actually going to share his thoughts on the situation. Hamza.
Yes, organized labor. You see, bless. Some few days ago, I indicated on another platform that I had little confidence in the objectives of the organized labor as far as their position on the Galamsey menace was concerned. And I did so based on solid grounds because I was pretty much convinced that the problem, there are demands, I should put it, that Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia ought to act in the Galamsey menace was not going to be heeded to by the president. And so for me, I expected them to be calling for a vote of no confidence in Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia and the entire government by invoking the processes and provisions of the 1992 Constitution and actually proceeding to petition Parliament and compel our parliamentarians to act in the interest of the Republic. And to the extent that that option was not pursued or was not being pursued, I had little confidence in organized labor because knowing how this government works, I knew that the government was not going to sit down without breaking the front of organized labor. I expected it. You see, when we say that there is the need for us to uproot the Nana Addo Bawumia government, you need to understand why we say so. If you look at most of the enviable institutions of this country that predated their presidency, a chunk of them have been reduced to nothing. And let's start. The first assault was against the Electoral Commission of this country when Nana Addo Dankwa became president. We had him wipe the entire slate of the EC clean and brought in partisan apparatchiks, people who were sympathetic to the cause of the MPP. We all sat down unconcerned, even when the National Democratic Congress started raising the red flags. The Electoral Commission is an important independent institution, or is supposed to be, as far as the pillars of our democracy is concerned. So when he started attacking it, I knew that we were headed for trouble, and that Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia would compromise every institution that we have labored to build since the inception of the Fourth Republic. And these are the pillars of the Ghanaian democracy, or the Fourth Republican democracy. Today, in the Electoral Commission, we have NPP patrons as deputy commissioners. Look at what is happening at the Electoral Commission today. Their Rambo-style posture against dissent or opposition parties. It is almost as if the Electoral Commission is in competition with, say, the National Democratic Congress, which is the largest opposition party in Ghana. To the extent that even after the NDC compelled a public IPAC meeting, the Electoral Commission in its release sought to create an impression that they were not compelled to do anything and that they just wanted to go ahead to hold an IPAC meeting publicly. What the hell is wrong with simply admitting that in line with our listening to views or our commitment to listen to all political parties, we think that this novel idea from an opposition party that we should hold a public IPAC meeting is something we agree with. And so we are doing, in the spirit of listening to all political parties. But even with that, they missed that golden opportunity. As if that was not enough, bless. Nana Addo extended that reckless, incompetent, insensitive, and wicked leadership to the fourth estate, that is the media of this country. You see, you cannot afford to have the Electoral Commission compromised and the media silenced, but Nana Addo did it. When investigative reports started emerging about the conduct of the government, what didn't we see? Journalists were killed, may the soul of Ahmed Suale rest in peace, for daring to investigate government officials. Manasseh Azure Awuni, who had the freedom to operate under His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, had to be smuggled out of this country by the Media Foundation for West Africa because government appointees and MPP apparatchiks were after him. Manasseh had to leave this country for months. And since his return, Manasseh has ceased being the Manasseh we used to know. Again, from 2009 to 2016, we all saw the works of Anas Armiao Anas. We hailed him, be it the NDC or an NPP. And it was because of the kind of reverence we gave to the works of Anas in this country that gave him that international stature. to the extent that the likes of CNN and BBC were rushing to have media engagements with Anas, Armia or Anas. In fact, certain countries started engaging him to do investigative works for them. Tanzania is one. Thank you, Doc, for that information. And that was even after President Mills commissioned him to do an investigation at the Ghana ports. Today, Bless, can you say with certainty that the Anas of yesterday is still the same Anas? When they assumed power, supported with government machinery because of the investigation he did against the president and Nyantachi and the likes, the president unleashed the full force of this country against him. To the extent that his godfather, Kweku Bako, became compromised and confused in the system and had to avoid media engagements for months. Yes. With a funny excuse of being unwell when he was being seen in town dribbling around, enjoying all the benefits associated with this government. Because he could not sit on radio to discuss the agenda to destroy Anas, of which he was part behind the scenes and pretended not to be. And with that system, they broke the fourth estate. They crushed our media. They crushed dissent. That is Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. They proceeded to our security agencies, to be specific, the Ghana Police Service, to appoint an IGP, hoping that the IGP would pursue the sectional interests of the new patriotic party. After his appointment, the IGP, after attempting to be independent, he was attempting, not that he's independent, and people should listen to me carefully because at this critical moment, I doubt if he's independent. He was attempting to be independent. What didn't we see? Meetings were held with some of his assistants at the police headquarters, and there were plots as to how to take him out of government. Indeed, the NPP as a government heavily supported these hoodlums from the Ghana Police Services who acted against their boss and took decisions together with national executives of the new patriotic party. And that broke the ranks of the Ghana Police Service. Doc, this is not a fact. For the first time, we saw an IGP and his commissioners facing committees in Parliament because of disunity that was deliberately financed and aided by Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. So that is what they do to exert control. They break to influence. They carried it to the Ghana Armed Forces. As we speak today, strange promotions at the Ghana Army, within the ranks of the Ghana Army. Tensions are high within the ranks of the Ghana Army because there are people who have been there for ages. They sit down and they see how their junior officers have been promoted over and above them, largely to break the ranks of command. So when organized labor had their first major declaration of strike on the Snid Hotels issue and succeeded, I told one of our senior comrades in the National Democratic Congress that they should write it on the wall. Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and Dr. Bawumia will break the ranks of organized labor. And today, are we not experiencing it? According to Professor Ransford Jampa, and I dove my heart for him, yesterday he indicated that the leadership of organized labor came into the meeting with prepared speeches. Their demands were simple. Ban small-scale mining in the short term. Withdraw LI 2462 and deploy soldiers to go out there to ensure that nobody mines in our water bodies, our forest reserves, and even farmlands. These were the demands. All the releases that government has done so far in relation to this issue, it is only an announcement that they will suspend or they will withdraw LI 2462. The rest of the demands have not been met. And so yesterday, their leadership went into a meeting with their own prepared speech, calling off the strike. This was after Nanado and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia interfered with the organizational structure of organized labor. And I lost every measure of confidence in the country last night. But then again, I was quickly reminded, because of that retreat, I was quickly reminded that the likes of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah faced far more challenges than we are facing today. But they never give up. So I know there are so many people who are watching today, or who are listening to us, who are down-spirited because of the conduct of organized labor. What I can tell them is that in any march towards justice and accountability, some of these challenges are bound to occur. And so we must quickly rise above it. Organized labor was one of the measures we were hoping to use to put this government in check. We have failed. It does not mean that that is the end of the struggle to take back our country. It is only a reminder that we actually need to do more than we initially thought, if indeed we must put these guys in check and uproot them from the presidency. But then again, I salute the moral and intellectual conscience of this country, UTAC. UTAC has proven once again that if everything in this country fails, the young lecturers today who are teaching our kids will not allow their conscience to be bought by any political party. They have demonstrated that what they teach our children in our schools is something we must have confidence in. They have demonstrated that they do not just teach them content, they teach them character. Because I am pretty much convinced that the students they teach will take a cue from this principled position. Because if you lose the intellectual conscience of your country, that would be the end of the country. And UTAC has demonstrated that indeed there is change on the horizon. What I expect is the National Union of Ghana students to follow in the suit of their teachers and lecturers. They must quickly issue a statement and declare their support for this strike action and demand that government brings that to an end. We've seen it in this country before. When we faced food challenges in the country, university students were those who joined the military in our cocoa farms to carry the cocoa to town centers. Doc, am I right?
That is correct.
So university students can once again partner with their lecturers to safeguard this country. But one last point, my brother, and that is, yes, I'll end on that, and that is on the conduct of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. Is it not strange that a man gunning to be elected president of this country, in discussions of this nature, sensitive issues that affect the people directly, he's dead silent? Have you heard Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia make any statement in relation to this Galamsey fight? Has he expressed concern about the havoc this is having on our economy and our country? Have you heard, any time we are engaged in critical issues that confront this country, that voice is missing? And yet this is the gentleman with the confidence, only God knows where that comes from, moving from country, region to region, asking us to give him our vote and make him a driver, when he has so far failed to demonstrate in the face of adversity where he stands? Why is it that that voice is missing in critical national discourse, especially at this time? That should tell you that we are dealing with a dishonest man. We are dealing with a man who lacks principles. We are dealing with a man who is only concerned about his selfish and problematic desire to be elected president of this country, and means no well for the good people of this country. And the youth must begin to realize that and be prepared to show him the exit come 7th December 2024.
Right, thank you. Yes. I was one of the ardent supporters of organized labor in the early beginning when they rallied behind their members to shoot down the agenda of Brian Champon to purchase about 60% of Snit's hotels, the shares of Snit's hotels. We all supported them and we all praised them in that patriotic stance. But unfortunately, we're beginning to see some form of political manipulation in undermining the principle of collective bargaining in this issue, right? It's not surprising that the kind of political system we have would have an effect on what is happening today with organized labor. If you look at the varieties of democracy data, right, and one of the reasons why Ghana is not achieving its optimum and social economic development is because of the polarization of our partisan politics in our public polities, and for that matter in other independent associations like organized labor and also even student bodies like NUCs and the rest, right? Plus, I must say that the menace of Galamsey is something that does not know MPP, NDC, or the Movement for Change. We are dealing with an issue that would risk us importing water in the next 5 years. This is an issue that needs the calling of a state of an emergency, right, Doc?
Yeah, very good.
Yes. And the impact of Galamsey on our environment today, 60% of our water bodies are gone. Ghana Water Company is recording about 14,000 NTUs, which the WHO standard should be less than 5. Their production capacity has reduced from 70% to 40%. Cocoa revenue is projected to reduce by $1 billion, and most of these farming areas have their lands degraded by the anthropogenic activities of illegal miners. So we have an issue at hand, and this issue is not going to affect the political class or the political elites who have failed us for 32 years, namely the duopoly of the MPP and the NDC. They have all the finances they can to migrate to other countries, but you and I would bear the consequence if we do not do anything about it. Have you heard any politician, right, who is gravely ill go to Kolebu for treatment? They always fly themselves to the United States or to the UK. Today, as it stands now, and I wish my brother, senior brother, Asante Bedie to, I wish him a speedy recovery. He didn't go to Kolebu, right? But he's receiving treatments abroad. And that has been the norm. Today, our hospitals are recording a lot of congenital birth defects, a lot of renal diseases. And today, cancer is at an all-time high due to the pollution of our water bodies by these heavy metals used by illegal miners. And all this affects members of organized labor and the entire population. And they've not seen through this. This is a president who said that I am going to put my presidency on the line to fight the menace of Galamsey. What intervention can this president do? We spent 300 million Ghana cedis, for God's sake. 300 million Ghana cedis from Operation Galamsey to Vanguard to Hot 1 and 2. Nothing, no absolute progressive result has been achieved by this government. And today, they're saying that they're going to repeal LI 2462. Again, the LI 2462, bless, is one of the most shameful LIs passed in Parliament, which the NDC and the MPP should bow their heads in shame for allowing this to go through. I heard the speaker, the Right Honorable Alban Sumana Bagbin, come out to speak against the menace of Galamsey. But he was there. He is a Speaker of Parliament. He was there when that LI was passed. That today, 38 of our forest reserves have been degraded. What kind of hypocrisy is this? So bless. What organized labor has done is an unpatriotic thing, in my own candid opinion, right? It is not the collective interest of their entire membership and their constituents, right? And I want to salute UTAG for standing for the people of Ghana. And of course, our teachers, it's because of our teachers that we are all seated here today. And they have shown that principle. And I want to salute UTAG. And we have to cheer them on. And whatever next step they are going to take, we are all going to support. We members of the Movement for Change, led by Honorable Alan Kojo Tramante. And we have pragmatic policy solutions to support our teachers when he comes to office, like affordable housing and vehicles, right? It's some of the policies that he has put in place to support teachers who belong to our educational system. Bless. I must say this, and there's something that I want to project on the screen. I want to make a case. I want to swear away from the conversation and make a case why the Ghanaian society should do away with the duopoly of the MPP and the NDC. And this case is from an economic comparison between Ghana and Malaysia. And if they can project that comparison for viewers to see, then after then, you would understand why we should not take scripture lessons from drinking bars. No. In 1957, Ghana and Malaysia both attained independence and self-governance. Ghana's main economic activity in 1957, right, was through the export of primary commodities. And we had an agrarian economy that was dominated by cocoa. And we were largely exporters of cocoa, timber, and then gold. Malaysia, on the other hand, also had an agrarian economy. And they largely produced and exported rubber and palm oil, which they learnt here, how to plant palm oil palm here, and also tin. In 1957 to 2023, the political stability of Ghana has been faced with several coups and gravely political instabilities from the 66 coup down to 1981. Malaysia, on the other hand, had a stable I would say, political landscape, right? Then the sad aspect of it is that we had a lot of natural resources: gold, timber, cocoa, bauxite, name it. Malaysia in 1971, under the leadership of Mohammed Mahathir, the prime minister then, introduced a new economic policy that ensured that there was diversification of the Malaysian economy in terms of what they produce. And so they started industrializing and adding more value to their natural resources. Ghana, on the other hand, failed to do that. Then they created specialized economic zones to attract FDIs, right? They ensured that they invested heavily in their education and ensured that the population of Malaysia was highly skilled to promote their industrialization from the first industrial revolution, second industrial revolution, and third industrial revolution. The GDP per capita in 1957 of Ghana was $356, and that of Malaysia was $323. What it means is that the GDP per capita is also an indicator for economic growth, right? It means that in 1957 we were better than Malaysia. Unfortunately, we entered a constitutional democratic rule in 1992, and it was.
Just to add on to you,
yes,
we were better than Malaysia for 9 years from 1957.
Exactly, and that was under the regime of Nkrumah. Yes, that was. Thank you for including that. That was under the regime of Nkrumah. Bless. In 1992, Ghana transformed into yes, the Fourth Republic, and also a democratic.
The confusion started with the UP when Busia became.
Oh, you know, we got no. Oh no, that one we'll come to that. Don't worry at all. We'll come to that. Why these two parties? I mean,
this morning, yeah.
So the issue that in 1992 we got into democratic rule, right? The 1992 constitution was introduced by the PNDC, led by Derrick John Rawlings, who is, so far in history, Ghana's longest serving head of state by record. He is Ghana's longest serving head of state in our history. Now, 21 years of power, and he belongs to who? The NDC. Now, we talk about the duopoly. Bless. In 1992, the GDP per capita of Ghana was $395. That of Malaysia was $3,193. Now, from 1992 to date, Malaysia's GDP per capita has increased from $3,193 to $13,315. And Ghana's own is $2,203. What I'm trying to refer you to is that the GDP per capita of Malaysia in 1992 is far, far, far better than that of Ghana. So Malaysia, which we started off far better than them in 1957, right, is far, far better than us. Now, in 1992 to date, which two major political parties have enjoyed executive powers and also legislative powers? The MPP and the NDC. 6 in balance, and they have failed to achieve that optimum social and economic development that the people of Ghana need. And so we, the people of Ghana, should think of another alternative. Right. Can you imagine Ghana being led without the MPP and the NDC? We need to experience that. We need to begin to experience that. I mean, all the data I've given is not a propaganda. They are all facts.
Right. Go on a strike. Our senior brothers campaigning against our
they are all facts. No, I mean, these are facts. And as a citizen, when I look at these historic data, I begin to worry. Is there a future for our people? Let us be honest here.
But that's a good question, though.
Is there a future for our people?
A Ghana?
Can we imagine a Ghana without the MPP and the NDC?
Because we are not there yet. We don't need to be there. See, what he fails to point out is that, and that has always been the charge of even NDC supporters against NDC. The NDC builds. The NDC builds. I'll give it. The NDC builds. And the MPP comes to destroy. So when we come back, we have to go back to represent the MPP. Anyway, I won't get into your time. So,
my brother, you know, we started off with some, I mean, nexus with our ideals, and that's fine. I don't think, I cannot trust, of course, I cannot trust President Mahama to salvage the current economic situation that has been plagued on this country by the incompetent Mahmoud Bawumia and his president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Because President Mahama in 2012 inherited a rising economy of 14% from the late
he continued
Professor,
a rising economy.
Professor, no.
You see, I will not allow you to proceed on the basis.
And I understand you.
No, I will not allow you to go on the basis.
Let me land.
I'll give you time. No,
let me land.
Don't worry, Elvis, I'll give you time.
President Mahama inherited a rising economy.
He did not inherit. He continued.
He inherited.
No.
He was not president.
He was vice president and chairman of the economic management
he inherited.
team.
He became president and he was given.
To be fair,
he inherited a 14. He inherited a 14%.
He continued.
Yes,
because
to be fair,
he was the chairman of the economic management.
Yes,
head of economic management.
Of course.
So, then you must credit the vice president of any other regime for
Exactly.
You see, Baumias, let me land and make my point, and I'll come to that.
No, you can't come to that.
Let me land. You see, you are interjecting. That's why he inherited a rising economy of 14% as president, and then when he was leaving office in 2016, this economy sank to 3.4%, and he dumped it into the IMF. Of course, the analysis I've given with Malaysia, right, is very critical that our macroeconomic structure is still weak. The structures of our economy is still weak. We're still reliant on export of our primary commodities, which we do not add a lot of value to. Today, other countries are talking about the fourth industrial revolution. Where are we as a country? Right. And that is why Honorable Alan Kojo-Tramantin, who is an erudite in industrialization, who we can entrust with executive powers to leapfrog our people from poverty to prosperity. We need to build a lot of industries, orient our economy from an import-driven one to an export-driven one, so that our city will be stabilized, so that our youth that are indulging in galamsey due to lack of jobs would have jobs to do.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Ramsey Yunusa. Don't worry, I'll give you time. Trust me, I'll give you time. Let me read a few messages. We have so many of them. Nazir Mohammed.
Lecture on this class.
Nazir Mohammed says, one of the modus operandi of Nana and the mafia is to infiltrate every organization and take control. Nukes is now useless. All the unions are contaminated with MPP foot soldiers. So these are very grown men on organized labor. Can't see the deformities. Nana has destroyed every institution as well. Cocoa Board, ECG, Bank of Ghana, etc. have been destroyed by party foot soldiers. Thank you very much. Yusuf Mohammed says, dear panel, what's the MPP government taking Ghanaians for? We are told that we should vote Dr. Bawumia into power, and after 3 months after coming to power, the water bodies will be made clean. This is something that is undermining the integrity of Ghanaians. We have been made to look like idiots, motions and zombies and senseless human beings. Okay, thank you. Abna Pokwaka says the worrying patterns is the medical doctors moving into politics because the political system has depicted that it is the only avenue to get rich. This is a worrying trend. Abna Pokwaka says, I think I've already... thank you, Elvis, for a wonderful submission. The truth must be told that we need a political system that is contextualized to align with our values. This political system called democracy is an imposition by the West to offer them a continuous opportunity to loot the resources of the continent. Thank you, Abna. Sayed John Paul says, good morning, blessed Koku. I'm watching live from Tamale, Sangnarigo. Thank you. Musa Abato says, I strongly disagree with organized labor decision to withdraw from the strike, given the history of unfulfilled promises by the Akufo-Addo and Bawumia government. And mere assurance is insufficient because if they have a track record of showing bad faith in addressing galamsey over the years. Thank you, Musa. Prince Kwame Annan says, blessed good morning. Ours will be worse than any other country if the stupidity of galamsey menace does not stop immediately. There will be no water, food for us to eat. We will all die soon, sooner than later. All right. Thank you so much, Elvis.
Yes, so thank you very much. I will come into this topic, but bless, I want to sound a very worrying issue in my village, in the Nadoli Kaleo constituency. Very disturbing issue. You see, yes, I actually contested him in 2016, contested it again in 2020. There is an issue that is of national security concern. Nadoli have a mining site, All right, the constituency has a mining site, and Azuma Resources is present there. And intermittently, we have skirmishes with them. The youth of Nadoli, Kaleo constituency, have skirmishes with them. Now, currently, and they are legitimately mining though, currently, as part of their operations, they have established for themselves a military protection. So there is military presence, and I'm sure their activities are again legitimate. But the concern here is that the misbehavior of some of these military people in Nadoli is too much. To the extent that a week ago, I think 6-7 days today, 2 military officers, in using a military van for an operation we actually know was not official, sped recklessly in town, running into 2 children whose father is on admission at the Nadoli hospital, and they were sent to send food. They killed one instantly. The other one is in very critical condition. I'm told that the right leg, the right limb broken, the left limb broken twice, one of the arms broken, the shoulder bone broken. Clearly, this is a person who is going to be disabled. Now, the worry is that the report I'm getting from my people, and the youth are very agitated, and I have asked them to come as we resort to constructive means. The district police commander spoke with the assembly member and the family, indicating that the matter is beyond his control to handle. So he has reported to the regional police command, and the regional police command will take action. It is 1 week today. The regional MTTU, the regional police command have not taken any step on the matter. The youth of Nadoli, we are very angry. We are angry at the security services. We are very angry at the MP. We are very, very angry at the DCE, who is head of DISEC. And we are actually angry at the conduct of all of these people collectively. For now, I'm not going to blow up much. I have made some contacts with well-meaning officials, both at the headquarters, and I'm going to resort with my community on very constructive measures. But I want the media to take this up and be on the alert. I still don't see the administrative logic in how a whole district police command can tell us a particular issue is beyond them. Meanwhile, it is also on record that that vehicle, the military vehicle in question, was released the same day. Statements was not even taken from the officials. And the statement, what they are telling us is that the military vehicle in question was for patrols, so they cannot keep it at the station. I do not think this is good policing, but I have urged the youth, at least those who consulted me with this matter, to come as we find a way of handling it. They better handle this matter well, because I'm also aware that the soldier men at the center of this gave out a phone number to the family of the deceased and the one who is sick now. One, without providing a coffin for the burial, they've given a contact that, look, take the other one to the hospital. If there are any issues, contact us. The family says they've been calling that number and nobody is even minding them. So, bless for your station and for the media. I will go legally on this with the community. I don't want the boys to do anything untoward. But I'm raising it because it has critical implications on the security of my district, especially at such times that politics and this mining issue has become a serious thing. We don't want a situation where the community will begin to attack security operatives. We know we must partner with them in the spirit of harmony to create a stable Nadoli. Now, to this very important topic under discussion, organized labor. I have already indicated, and I published same on social media yesterday, that organized labor, I think I should have done that as my thesis topic if this had happened some 5 years ago. I said organized labor, what? A disorganized organization in need of reorganization. This is the reality about organized labor. They have just behaved in a manner that is not different from how NADMO is, the National Disaster Management Organization. NADMO itself is a disaster in need of management. Are you getting it? So organized labor has become so disorganized. It needs reorganization. Now, the reality is that it exposes the irresponsibility of government and the hypocrisy of the opposition. There's no argument about it. Government is a bit dilly-dally on the matter. The opposition forces are going about as of when it conveniences them. They campaign to tell certain constituencies that when they win, they will actually allow them to do what? They will actually allow them to do galamsey. There are leading members of the NPP, one of whom a medical doctor who went to tell people these miners were imported.
Doctor, are you afraid?
That they were brought in by the NDC. My brother, these people doing the illegal mining are our people. And to be fair, there are structural economic inequalities that have compelled the Ghanaian youth to do illegal mining.
Absolutely.
Are you getting it? In the meantime, we shouldn't do mining. But the Chinese is brought in as a friend of politicians. Chinese come as friends of powerful chiefs. Chinese come as friends of powerful corporations and companies, and they are allowed to mine. Why do we say Ghanaian youth shouldn't mine? Master, they will have to mine, oh. They will have to mine to feed their families. After all, hunger will kill them if they don't mine. Hunger will kill all of us. So whether hunger is what's killing us or pollution of water bodies is what's killing us, all die be what? Be die. Now, this kind of paradox is what creates the need for us to give particular political will and attention to the issue. Because the issue is so bad that because people think that there is so much inequality, they would do mining with impunity. It is difficult for government to talk. But let us look at the challenges it has posed. Okay, I think government is not addressing the matter technically. Number one, the water issues. He mentioned cancer and other pediatric issues and deformities that are congenital at birth. Number one, we have issues of turbidity. That is, on the surface of it, the available molecular quantity of particles, okay, that may contribute to sedimentation. And what that means is that it can actually lead to the shrinkage of what? Of most of these rivers. That is number one. Apart from turbidity, we can talk about the presence of what? Heavy metals like mercury and iron in our waters. That is actually what causes most of these health complications. Then number three, you realize the distraction in the physicochemical properties of the water. Another critical issue. So you realize that in the face of this is just for water pollution. As for the degradation of our biodiversity, okay, is something we cannot even start to talk about now because it's so technical that people don't see it unless you are within that field of research. But what can we do then? In the midst of all of these things, is it military deployment? Is it the revocation of LI 2462? Is it the declaration of forest and, how do you call it, water bodies as red zone that is a formidable solution to the matter? I think that no. And this is what organized labor should have considered in their action. Or shall I say in our action? You know, it's a no. And it's a no because these by themselves do not provide a formidable, sustainable solution to restoring, in fact, to recovering and restoring the integrity of our vegetative reserves. Bless. What the media should now be interested in is a conversation that professes policy options to government. In case government and civil society have forgotten, let us suggest solutions to them. Number one, what can we do? For me, the first intervention we need to do is not just an outright military operation because we are going to kill our own who are looking for food. For hunger, the system has caused them. So what are we going to do? Let us form an interagency task force so that you have EPA, Environmental Protection Agency there. You have the security forces there, but you have EPA. You have Water Resources Commission there. And then you have what? You have Forestry Commission there as well. Then maybe a corrupt entity like the Minerals Commission can just have a representative on it. That is number one. It will allow them proceed on a mix of kinetic and non-kinetic forces. That is, bringing diplomacy together with a bit of force. So the force comes in where there is non-compliance, when this task force get to certain fields and say that, look, leave here, we are taking your equipment, and there is resistance, then the military comes in. That will be a reasonable approach to the matter, and that will be a matured approach to having the situation. That is number one. Number two, we waste a lot of money for these military people going around sites that are known through the licensing. Okay, they go to specific ones. But the real distraction is happening in places and by people, some of whom are not actually known yet. Some of whom are not actually known by government. So what are we supposed to do? My suggestion again is that we should do what I will propose as a geospatial mapping. And the media is not listening. Geospatial mapping is required. If we do geospatial mapping, what it will do is to outline hotspot areas where such activities happen with high propensity of distraction. Then we itemize that. Then we now proceed to apply what? Technology. So we use what we call, and I'm doing a paper on the implications, or if you like it, the impact of outer space technology in managing violent extremism in the Sahel. Government can actually use a lesser extent of outer space technology using drone technology. Okay, so the Ghana Armed Forces or the Interagency Task Force sits in Accra here. We already have a GPRS system, so we fly drones and we are able to spot wherever people are at any point in time. So if the military is moving, they are moving in real time with evidence and with GPRS location of where these people are. Are you getting it? If we are able to do that, then we can go ahead to form a community-led water and environment stewardship program. What it will do is to bring people like farmers, people like fishers, and household water users together with traditional leadership on the table to proffer solutions of community garden. Then we end it with what? A quick development of a mobile app. We have the citizenship app and what have you. People are talking about digitization and digitalization. What stops us from developing an ecological app? Ghana's ecological app. What it means is that if I see miners, or if I have that app, at any point in time, if I have data around my community within a certain radius, the app will give me an indication on my phone that this is what is happening at this location. So I can just tell the community watchdogs, then we begin to take steps, or I can just go on the app, tap on the app, and send a direct message to the Interagency Task Force. Then the nearest station is deployed to the place. This is what we need to do, so that you realize that we'll create an interface that allows us talk with the stakeholders, the people who are engaged in the mining. Are you getting it? Now, most of those engaged in this mining for purposes of, if you like it, peasantry, to just put bread and butter on the table, are not really the main problem compared to those doing real large-scale mining but hiding under small-scale licensing, most of whom are actually politicians. Are you getting it? Then, finally, there is a trade component of it, a logistical component of it. Where do we manufacture, and I want to ask, do we manufacture excavators and earth equipment in Ghana? Do we assemble excavators and earth equipment in Ghana? So it means that we import them. Can we not have a national machinery agency, machinery importation regulation agency? And what they do is that if you were to want to import some of these equipment, we must first of all know what you can't import it as an individual, you should import it as an organization. And if you're an organization, for example, and you are not in a space and with working capital, shares, and financial requirement that suggests that you can actually own these things. And there's evidence that you've been in road construction, you've been in civil works, you've been in housing. There is no point allowing you bring these things in. There must be a regulation on the importation of earth equipment. These are actionable grounds to control the menace in the short term. In the medium to long term, then as this interface produces results through community sensitization and stakeholder engagement and actor engagement, that's the actors in Galamsey, including Galamseyers themselves, bringing out solutions, we can then proceed to form what? To form alternative livelihood options. People are willing to stop what they are doing. People know what they are doing is wrong, but they know that some foreign people are doing the same wrong thing under protection of state. So why are you telling us to stop? Mining is an age-old thing. Our grandfathers mined. Mining has been happening. How can it be bad only now? So the problem is not the people. The problem is government. The problem is institutional failure. The problem is weak institutional capacity. The problem is deliberate lack of political will. The problem is the lack of common sense. The problem is the economy that is benefited by what? By politicians. People fail to talk now because they will lose their elections if they do. In 2020, we suffered. I suffered in Adolikele through mining. Are you getting it? And people suffered. Political parties suffered the loss of seats. This is the reality. So then, it calls into action the need for government to help itself. And I mean all governments to help themselves. What can they do? Yes.
How come, in terms of the presidential votes in those constituencies, another one? And the parliamentary candidates one.
So one thing that is clear with our kind of, my study of our kind of parliamentary elections is that when the grassroots are angry, they are angry mostly at the candidate as a person because they feel you are going about telling them big things, how you are linked, how you are connected, and how you develop them. Okay, this is our small concern. Why have you not been able to address it? Yeah. So they keep on their party allegiance, but vent their frustration directly on the parliamentary candidate. That is what I have realized. Right. So don't write me, my brother. So that is the. Let me just conclude on a decent note. Let me conclude on a decent note. Yeah. So these are the conversations you, the media, must bring policymakers, practitioners, and experts on roundtable discussions to solve this matter. Stop bringing NDC, NPP, Movement of Change, CPP, and whatnot so much into this. Are you getting it? I mean that not.
We've never enjoyed.
Are you getting it? As for the uselessness of organized labor, people have, I'm sure by now, organized labor, I'm sure by now people have bought houses. Oh, yes. People have bought cars. Oh, yes. People have a new V8 out of this matter. Yes. That's the kind of organized labor we have. Yes. So you must understand what they mean by being organized. They are organized only to the extent that they are able to collect monies from both political parties. As for the Ghana Medical Association, and I'm dropping on this note, I congratulate Ghana Medical Association. You know why? Even though the strike is pressing, but for the Ghana Medical Association, I find it hypocritical. If they have gone on a strike in the interest of future sick people, when we have current sick people, it would have been the most stupid. It would have been the most stupid thing by the GMA, the Ghana Medical Association. You love people who are yet to be sick so much than those who are now sick. That would have been silly. But for UTAC, we are proud, and I congratulate you so much.
Just to add to
thank you.
Our time is up.
You know, you mentioned drones.
Yeah.
This current administration bought drones to fight Galamsey, but till date, they said they can't find where the drones are.
Thank you so much. Our time is up. There are so many messages I should have read. I'm terribly sorry. Good morning to Alhaji Hamza from Pig Farm, Stephen Peng from Wahoo is an ardent viewer of the show, and to all our cherished viewers across the country. Thank you so much. Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Council. I'll catch you tomorrow. Bye-bye.